when I was wee, I would quite often be accused of answering a question with a question. It'd probably be, but why? Actually, 48 years old, I still often does not go, but why? It's a way to understand, but sometimes it can be a way to challenge why people are asking you to do something, or why they're thinking of a particular mindset. And I wish that I'd known when I was wee that Jesus would often answer a question with a question. In fact, that was pretty much his modus operandi. Very rarely does he answer a question at all in the Gospels. It's about 7 or 8 times. But he poses maybe 300 questions. And he's asked over 180. And here in Matthew's Gospel, we hear Jesus asking the religious leaders, well, under what authority was John the Baptist acting? In response to them asking, in what authority was Jesus doing the things he was doing? Now, this passage is set in the period that we would call Holy Week in the church, in the lead up to Jewish Passover is when it would be set in Jesus' time. And earlier in this passage from Matthew, Jesus has marched triumphant into Jerusalem with crowds waving palm branches, throwing cloaks on the ground and shouting, Hosanna, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. He has been welcomed into Jerusalem as God's Messiah, the promised one who will come and save God's people. And shortly after that, he would go to the temple and he would drive the traders and the money lenders and the money changers out of the temple, saying this is a place of God, not a place to do trading. And he would curse a fig tree. Now, yes, it wasn't actually time for the fig tree to be in fruit, but the fig tree is used in the prophets in the Hebrew Testament time and time again as a symbol of God's chosen people. And are they fruitful or are they not? So there's an awful lot of pointing towards Jesus being either the Messiah, the promised one of God in the way he's acting, or a prophet sent by God to prepare the way for that Messiah. But as those of us in the church know, it was John the Baptist, his cousin, who was sent to prepare the way for Jesus. John the Baptist, who was questioned by the religious leaders, who John the Baptist called them a whole load of vipers for them coming and looking for him, but not really doing the will of God. But the people, the ordinary folks, the people who would probably describe themselves in today's terms of not religious but spiritual, they saw what John the Baptist was doing and responded to it. They went into where John was and asked for baptism as a symbol of them turning their lives around. So when Jesus goes to them, on what authority was John the Baptist acting? He knows the people were in favour of his cousin, and the religious leaders in the main were against him. And if the religious leaders, as they work it out, say, well, John was sent from heaven, sent by God, then it would be like, well, why didn't you believe him? And if they say he was just working on the earth, they know that the ordinary people who appreciated the work that John was doing would go absolutely nuts. And this is a crowd who've just welcomed Jesus into Jerusalem on one of the most frictious periods in the Jewish calendar during Roman period, because it was remembering how God saved God's people from slavery in Egypt. Those people who would go on a long journey and who would moan regularly at Moses that God wasn't doing what they wanted them to do, but they wouldn't say God wasn't doing it, they would say it was Moses. And as we heard from Exodus, it was a point where they thought they were going to die of thirst, but actually it was quite reasonable in a desert going, how are we going to get water? We need water. Humans without water will die after 3 days. It's a basic fundamental need. So it wasn't unreasonable for the people to be challenging Moses' authority, to be going, what's going on here? We need water. And God responded by showing Moses where there was a spring from which they could get water. The people responded to God, not necessarily to the people. The people had responded to John the Baptist, who was sent by God. The people were responding to Jesus, who was sent by God, who is God incarnate. But there was the religious leaders who were questioning the authority. The religious leaders were wanting to keep the peace, but this wasn't the peace of God, this was the Roman peace. They were wanting to keep things nice and easy and keep the stability that they had, keep their positions, not be challenged. Were they really doing the work of God's kingdom? And in some ways that's kind of what Jesus drives at when he talks about this person with two sons, who one son, he says, I need you to go to the vineyard and do some work for me. And the son goes, no, I'm not doing it. Probably rolls his eyes and doesn't bother. But eventually goes, you know what? I probably should do it. So goes away and does the work in the vineyard. While there's another son who, to his father's face, goes, oh yes, Dad. Oh yes, Master. I will do as you request. But does hee-haw. And Jesus knows that the religious leaders often complain that he's seen interacting with, eating with, forgiving prostitutes and tax collectors. And he goes, you know what? They're doing the work of the kingdom. They might not be the ones who know the law of Moses intimately. They might not be perfect people as you as religious leaders think you are. They might not be the people who go to worship in the temple as often as they can or every day if they live in Jerusalem. But they are doing the work of the kingdom. They're the ones who are doing the work of God. They are the ones working in the vineyard being symbolic of God's kingdom on earth, or the earth. And in our time, in our place, many people out with our churches, out with organised religion, wouldn't be looking necessarily towards the religious leaders as an example, but towards the people that they know, in our context, go to church, and think to themselves, well, are they doing the work of the kingdom? Are they working in the vineyard? Are they doing the work that God is asking them to do? Or is it the people who may be atheists but are feeding the hungry? Who are welcoming the stranger, who are giving water to the thirsty? who are fighting for housing, proper affordable housing for those without a home. Because the work of the kingdom, or responding to being asked to do things by God, it's not whether we say yes, it's whether we do it or not. Are we? Really? Are we? Amen.